The retirement planning industry does not want you to see this video because these 7 Tennessee towns make their $60,000 a year retirement budget look like a sales pitch. Once you realize the average retiree in this country spends somewhere around $60,000 a year, while the average Social Security check pays about $25,000, you start asking some very uncomfortable questions about where you chose to live. Because that gap is not a spending problem, it's a location problem. So I drove 7 towns where the math actually closes, and I found a town that was the capital of this entire state for exactly 1 day, a lake you ride a boat across 300 feet underground, a county where World War II veterans came home and took their own courthouse back by force, and a tax rule that pays you a break specifically because your income is small. If that sounds better than another year of watching the account go the wrong direction, hit that subscribe button now, because we're counting all 7 down and you do not want to miss number 1. Let's count it down. Number 7, Greenbrier, Tennessee. When I first drove into Greenbrier, I thought I'd found a Nashville suburb nobody had priced like one yet. 30 minutes north of the city, about 7,000 people, farmland on 3 sides, and a downtown you can walk end to end in 4 minutes. Then I looked at what happened to the crime rate here. Greenbrier's violent crime fell by more than half in a single year, down 53%, and the town now runs a total crime rate around 619 per 100,000 people. For scale, Tennessee's statewide property crime rate alone sits near 1,600 per 100,000. Greenbrier's total, everything included, is a third of the state's property number by itself. And here's the piece that matters most on a fixed income. That's the tax rule I promised you at the start. Robertson County runs the Tennessee property tax freeze. If you're 65 and your household income falls under the county limit, which for the 2026 program sits around $63,000, your property tax bill locks at whatever you owed the year you signed up, and it never moves again. Not capped. Frozen. On a Social Security check of $2,000 a month, you're at $25,000 a year. You don't just qualify, you're nowhere near the ceiling. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Greenbrier. 10 minutes up the road in Athens sits the site of the Bell Witch haunting, the most famous ghost story in American history, the one where Andrew Jackson supposedly turned his wagon around and went home. There's a cave, a museum, and a town that has never once tried to talk anybody out of believing it. The quietest county in the region, and America's loudest ghost story is in it. Here's your takeaway. Before you buy anywhere in this state, find out whether that specific county runs the freeze. Not all of them do. On a fixed income, it is the most valuable piece of paperwork you will ever file, and nobody at the closing table is going to mention it. Number 6, Huntingdon, Tennessee. When I first drove into Huntingdon, I thought I'd hit the absolute bottom of the market. West Tennessee, Carroll County, about 4,000 people, a courthouse square, a hardware store, and prices that sound like a typo when you say them out loud. Then I found out what's sitting on that square. Start with the money, because it's the whole premise of this video. Carroll County carries some of the lowest housing costs anywhere in Tennessee, and Tennessee already runs well below the national average. Buy a modest house here outright, and your property tax bill lands in the low hundreds a year. Add no state income tax on your benefit. Tennessee scrapped the last piece of that in 2021, and your fixed monthly cost comes down to utilities, insurance, food, and gas. That's a life that fits inside 1 check. Not 2. 1. And it's quiet here the way small West Tennessee county seats are quiet. Not a lot happens. On this list, that is not a criticism. The other thing working for you is the shape of the town. Everything you need sits within a few blocks of that square: the courthouse, the bank, the pharmacy, the grocery. That radius matters enormously at 85 when the question stops being whether you can afford the house and becomes whether you can still reach the pharmacy on a day you'd rather not drive across a county. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Huntingdon. The actress Dixie Carter grew up in this county, and when the town's old theater needed rescuing, her name and her money went behind it. Today, there's a performing arts center right on that square, in a town of 4,000 people, booking touring acts and concerts that cities of 50,000 can't get. A real theater, in a town you have never heard of. Here's your takeaway. The cheapest towns in America are not all the same town. Some of them are genuinely empty, and some of them had one person who refused to let that happen. Before you write a place off, find out which kind you're looking at, and the fastest way to tell is to drive the square at 7 on a Friday night and count the lit windows. Number 5, Sweetwater, Tennessee. When I first drove into Sweetwater, I had it pegged as a highway town and nothing more. It sits right off Interstate 75 between Knoxville and Chattanooga, about 6,000 people, and most of America knows it strictly as an exit number. Then somebody told me what's underneath it. Here's the budget picture first. Monroe County housing costs sit well below the state average, and being parked exactly halfway between two cities is worth far more than it sounds. You're an hour from Knoxville and an hour from Chattanooga, which means 2 full hospital systems, 2 airports, and 2 of everything else, without paying to live inside either one. 2 cities, neither bill. And that halfway position does something else people miss. When you're the town between 2 markets rather than inside one, nothing bids your housing up. There's no commuter wave, no weekend crowd, no second home money. The prices here are set by the people who actually live here, which is exactly the condition you want when you're buying on a fixed income. And Sweetwater has a hospital in town. At 78, that is not a small detail. The safety picture holds up too. This is small-town East Tennessee, where the department knows most of the population by name, and what crime does occur is overwhelmingly property crime rather than violence. That distinction matters more as you age than the headline number ever does. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Sweetwater. That's the underground lake I promised you at the start. Just outside town is the Lost Sea, a 4.5-acre lake sitting inside a cave system, recognized by Guinness as the largest underground lake in the United States. You ride a glass-bottom boat across it, 300 feet below the surface, on water divers still have not found the far end of. A boat ride, under a mountain, in a town nobody stops in. Here's your takeaway. On a fixed income, the halfway town beats the destination town nearly every time. You get access to 2 cities and pay for neither, and access is the thing you're actually buying at this stage of life. If you're learning things about Tennessee you didn't expect, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this video reach more people who are running the same numbers you are. Number 4, Jamestown, Tennessee. When I first drove into Jamestown, I was up on the northern end of the Cumberland Plateau, and the temperature had dropped 6 degrees since I left the valley. Fentress County, about 2,000 people in town. Big South Fork and its gorgeous 20 minutes north. And the cheapest housing I found anywhere on this list. Let me put a real number on it. Fentress County's median home value runs a fraction of the national figure, and the county's tax rate is low even by Tennessee standards. Buy here outright and your annual property tax bill can land in the low hundreds. Then at 65 on Social Security alone, you very likely qualify for the state's tax relief program on top of that, a separate program from the freeze with an income limit closer to $38,000, where the state reimburses part of what you paid. That's a break you qualify for because your income is small. Read that back. Elevation is the other thing you're buying. You're at roughly 1,700 feet, which takes the edge off July permanently, for free, forever, with no cooling bill attached to it. And the crime picture up here is what you'd expect from a county this rural and this small. There isn't much, and what there is tends to be property crime born of poverty rather than anything organized. Fentress County is poor, and I'm not going to dress that up, but poor and dangerous are 2 different conditions, and people conflate them constantly when they're reading a map from 4 states away. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Jamestown. 15 minutes north, in a valley called Pall Mall, is where Sergeant Alvin York came from. The farmer who captured 132 German soldiers almost single-handedly in 1918, then came home and put his fame into building a school for local kids. His farm, his mill, and his grave are all still sitting in that valley. He turned down Hollywood money to build a high school. Here's your takeaway. Cheap and remote is only a problem if you fail to plan for it. Jamestown has a hospital, but for anything serious you're driving to Cookeville or Knoxville. Get that drive time yourself in bad weather before you sign anything. Number 3, Athens, Tennessee. When I first drove into Athens, I figured it for an ordinary McMinn County seat. Courthouse Square, a small university on the edge of it, about 13,000 people, Knoxville and Chattanooga each roughly an hour out. Then I read what happened here in 1946. Now, here's the wild card fact about Athens, and it's the strangest thing on this entire list. That is the veterans I promised you at the start. After the war, McMinn County was run by a political machine that controlled the sheriff's department and, by most accounts, the ballot boxes with it. When returning GIS ran their own slate of candidates and then watched deputies haul the ballot boxes off on election night, several hundred of those veterans armed themselves, surrounded the jail where the boxes had been taken, and forced them back out before morning. It is called the Battle of Athens, 1946, in America. And here's why I'm telling you that in a video about safe towns. A county that went through something like that develops an unusually low tolerance for anything crooked, and 80 years later you can still feel it in how the place runs. Athens is orderly, well-lit, and civic in a way that registers within about 10 minutes of arriving. Now the practical side. McMinn County housing sits below the state average, and Star Regional Medical Center is right in town, not 40 minutes out in town. Tennessee Wesleyan University keeps a main street breathing that would otherwise have gone dark 20 years ago. A hospital, a college, and a square, in a town where a paid-off house costs you a few hundred a year to keep. Here's the takeaway. Safety is not only a crime statistic, it's also whether a town has a working hospital, a lit downtown, and people who still show up to meetings. Athens has all three, and it got them the hard way. Number 2, Church Hill, Tennessee. When I first drove into Church Hill, I was not expecting the numbers I was about to find. A town of roughly 7,000 in Hawkins County, sitting above the Holston River in the Tri-Cities corner of the state. Nothing about it announces itself. Then I pulled the crime data. Church Hill's overall crime rate runs around 91% below the national average. Its property crime numbers are a fraction of the state's. In multiple national rankings built on FBI data, this town lands at or near the very top of the safest places in Tennessee, and it has stayed there year after year, which matters far more than any single year's ranking does. One quiet year is luck. A decade of them is a town. The cost side is just as strong. The cost of living index here sits near 86, meaning roughly 14% under the national average, with a median home value well below the national median. Hawkins County runs the tax freeze at 65, and you're 20 minutes from Kingsport, which means a full hospital system, real specialists, and a regional airport without paying a city's prices to reach any of them. Top of the state safety, bottom of the market cost, and a serious hospital 20 minutes out. That combination is rare enough that in most videos I'd have opened with it. And the reason it exists here is worth understanding, because it tells you what to look for elsewhere. Church Hill isn't safe because of heavy policing or gates or cameras. It's safe because almost everyone owns their home, the population barely turns over, and the median age sits close to 50. Stability is the mechanism. Everything else is downstream of it. Now here's the wildcard fact about Church Hill. In 1971, archaeologists excavated an ancient Yuchi village site inside this town, one of the significant archaeological finds in Tennessee history, with artifacts from it now held in museums around the country. People chose this exact spot to live centuries before anybody was ranking anything. Here's the takeaway. When you compare towns on safety, never look at 1 year of data. Pull 5. Anybody can have a quiet year, and the towns that sell you on one are counting on you not checking the other 4. If you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who does their homework before they buy. So do yourself a favor and hit that like button. Number 1, Kingston, Tennessee. When I first drove into Kingston, I came in over the water and thought I'd found a lake town that had somehow escaped being turned into one. Watts Bar Lake wrapping most of the way around it, a courthouse square, about 6,000 people, and not a gate in sight. Then I found out what this town used to be. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Kingston, and it's the capital I promised you at the start. On September 21st, 1807, the Tennessee General Assembly convened right here, and Kingston became the capital of this state. Then it adjourned and went back to Knoxville. The whole thing lasted a matter of hours. Here's why. A treaty with the Cherokee had promised that if they gave up the land that became Roane County, the capital would move here. So the legislature showed up, technically kept the promise, and left the next morning. The land was gone. The capital was not. The monument still stands in the middle of town, and this county has never once pretended it was anything other than what it was. Now the reason it's number 1. In safety rankings built on FBI data, Kingston comes out at or near the top in Tennessee. One recent year, the town recorded 19 property crimes and 8 violent crimes total, across a population above 6,000. That works out near 428 per 100,000, against a state property crime rate around 1,600. And it's cheap. Roane County housing sits below the state average, the tax rate is low, and the freeze is on the table at 65. There's a hospital in Kingston. The medical center at Oak Ridge is 25 minutes out, and Knoxville is 40. So run the whole thing end to end. A paid-off house bought with equity you already have. A property tax bill in the hundreds, frozen for good at 65. No state income tax touching your benefit. A hospital in town, and a bigger one down the road. Water at the end of the street that costs you nothing to look at. And one of the lowest crime rates in Tennessee wrapped around all of it. That fits inside $2,000 a month, comfortably, with room left over. And honestly, of every town on this list, it's the one I'd move to myself. Every town here has the one thing the expensive places quietly stopped offering, a life that fits inside a check that doesn't grow. And here's the part nobody says out loud. Safe and cheap are not opposites. We've all been trained to believe you pay extra for safety, that the low-crime zip code is by definition the expensive one. In Tennessee, that is simply not how it works. The safest towns in the state turn out, over and over, to also be among the cheapest, because the thing driving both numbers is the same thing. A small, stable population where people have been neighbors for 30 years. You're not buying security, you're moving to where it already is. If this helped you see what $2,000 a month can actually buy, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment telling me which of these 7 you'd pick. If you're already living on Social Security in a small Tennessee town, tell me what your monthly total really comes to. That number helps people more than anything I can say from here. If this one hits 10,000 likes, I'll do a part 2 on the safest towns just across the state line. I'll see you in the next.